Hello everyone, welcome to the fifth lecture on number theory. In this lecture we will solve some problems based on previous theory that we have read, and all these problems are problems of past year of RMO and NMO. So let's get started. So the first problem is problem number 2 in RMO 1993. The problem says prove that the tens digit of any power of 3 is even. For example, 3 to the power 6 is 729, whose tens digit is 2, and 2 is even. So let's start with what do you mean by tens digit? So tenth digit is the digit at the 10th place, ones, 10th, 100, 1000, and so on. And we want to prove that 10th digit is even. So we'll prove this by induction. So why we will use induction is because if we note the powers of 3 and the ones and tens digit, we can see a pattern. So 3 to the power 1 is 3, whose ones digit is 3. 3 square is 9, whose ones digit is 9. 3 cube is 27, whose ones digit is 7. And 3 to the power 4 is 81, whose ones digit is 1. So beyond this, if we check the ones digit, these digits will recur. This 3971 would recur, because if you multiply 1 by 3 to get the ones digit of 3 to the power 5, we multiply 81 by 3. So 81, if we multiply 81 by 3, we multiply basically 1 by 3 first to get the ones digit, which is 3. And again, if we want to get the ones digit of 3 to the power 6, we basically multiply this 3 by another 3, which will give 9. And if you want to get the ones digit of 3 to the power 7, we multiply this 9 by 3, which will give 27, and ones digit would be 7, and so on. So this pattern will repeat itself. So the ones digit of any power of 3 would be 3, 9, 7 or 1. These are the only ones digit possible. The important point is, because this 1 comes at 3 to the power 4, that's why this cycle repeats itself. This 3, 9, 7 and 1 cycle repeats itself. Yeah. Now let's continue. The possible. So now let us also look at what happens to the tens digit. So if we multiply 3 by 3, we get 9. So the tens digit is 0. If you multiply 9 by 3, the tens digit is 2. Multiply 7 by 3, the tens digit is 2. And if you multiply 1 by 3, the tens digit is 0. So every time we multiply the ones digit by another 3, so from moving from 1 power to let's say 3 to the power n to 3 to the power n plus 1, what we do is basically we multiply the ones digit by 3, and then we multiply the tens digit by 3. So from this, what I want to say is that since any power of 3 has last digit 3971, and when I multiply this by 3, the tens digit, that is that will be carried to the tens digit that would be carried to the previous tens digit would always be even. So let's say if we wanted to multiply 243 times 3, so 3 times 3 is 9, and this will contribute 0 to the tens place. So yeah, that's one thing. So these two observations, that the ones digit are recurring and the tens digit are not affected if we multiply a number by 3, suggests that we could use induction in this proof. If we prove that 3 to the power n is the tens digit of 3 to the power n is even, then we can jump from 3 to the power n to 3 to the power n plus 1 using this result. Another point to note in general in number theory problems is that induction should always be a backup plan if you want to prove any property for all natural numbers. So if you want to prove a property for all natural numbers and you don't have anything else in mind, then you can always try induction. You can try the first step. You can try n equal to 1, you can try n equal to 2, you can try to uh, observe a few things, which is what I started doing here, and I thought why not use induction in this case. So let's start the proof by induction. So the induction hypothesis is that the tens digit of 3 to the power k is even. Let's check the base case. Base case is k equal to 1. So 3 to the power 1 is 3. Tens digit is 0, which is even. Now, pk, what is the induction hypothesis? Induction hypothesis is that tens digit of 3 to the power k is even, which is what we assume in pk. The induction step is to show that the tens digit of 3 to the power k plus 1 is even. So, assuming that the tens digit of 3 to the power k is even, we need to prove that the tens digit of 3 to the power k plus 1 is also even. So, suppose 3 to the power k is 100 times x plus 10 times a plus b, where x could be any number and a and b are digits. So, I divided 3 to the power k into 3 parts. One is the ones digit, which is b. Second is the tens digit, which is a, and the rest of the parts is which has a factor of 100 and which is x. So for example, 729 equal to 7 times 100 plus 2 times 10 plus 9. So x equal to 7 here, but x could also be 2 digit, 3 digit number. I don't care about x basically, which I will show later. And a is even because the tens digit of 3 to the power k is a, so a is even, and b is 1 out of 1, 3, 7 and 9. These are the only 4 possibilities for b. Then what is 3 to the power k plus 1? 3 to the power k plus 1 is 3x times 100, and note that the tens digit of x times 100 is 0, because this is divisible by 100, this whole number is divisible by 100, so this won't contribute anything to the tens digit. Tens digit is only coming from this a, and if I multiply b by 3, then from 3b it will come, but it's not coming from 100x or this part. So 3 to the power k plus 1 is 3x times 100 plus 10 times 3a plus 3b. Now tens digit of 3x times 100 is 0 because it's divisible by 100, and tens digit of 10 times 3a is either 3a or 3a minus 10 or 3a minus 20. It's 3a minus 10 if 3a is greater than 10, which means if I multiply a number by 3, then its digit would be either 3a if this 3a is less than 10. Otherwise, if it's greater than equal to 10, then 1 would be carried forward to the hundreds place, and then the digit would be 3a minus 10. And if this number is greater than even 20, this should be less than equal to 20. Less than 20. If this number is greater than equal to 20, then this would be 3a minus 20. 2 would be carried forwarded to the hundreds place, and 3a minus 20 would be the digit. But note that 3a, 3a minus 10 and 3a minus 20 are all even because a is even. So 3a is even, 3a minus 10 because 10 is also even. So difference of two even numbers is even. So this is also even, and 3a minus 20 is also even. So the tens digit of 10 times 3a is even. Now the tens digit of 3b is also even, which we showed earlier. This is what we had found earlier, that if we multiply, the last digit could be 3, 9, 7 and 1, and if we multiply it by 3, we would always get an even digit. So this 2 could be added to the tens digit, but it's even, so it doesn't affect if the digit would be even or odd, it would remain the same. Now, so tens digit of 3b is even, which we showed earlier. Therefore, the tens digit of this whole number 3 to the power k plus 1, which is the sum of the tens digit of all these numbers, is even. So this completes the proof. So there were 2-3 ideas very essential to this problem. One was to identify that the ones digit of 3 occur in cycle. It could only be 1, 3, 9, 7 and 9, and then if you multiply 1, 3, 7 and 9 by 3, the tens digit would always be even, and the final and important step was to use induction in this proof. So this concludes the problem. Let's look at the next problem now. So this is problem number 4 in RMO 1995. Show that the quadratic equation x square minus 7x minus 14 times q square plus 1 equal to 0, where q is an integer, has no integer roots. So to understand this problem, just recall how we proved that that root p is not a rational number. So root 2 is not a rational number. So that proof is basically saying that m square minus n square times p equal to 0 has no integer solution for m and n. That is, we cannot find any integer m n such that m square minus n square times p equal to 0. So with this understanding, if we want to show that a quadratic equation does not have integer roots, we can proceed to this problem using the ideas of divisibility. So, and another thing to note here is that 7 and 14 are the two coefficients that are occurring in this equation, so we can use divisibility by 7. 7 being a prime number would also prove very helpful in showing in proceeding with this problem. So let's try to prove this by contradiction. So which is what we did in this problem also. So it's quite similar to this case. So suppose m is the root of the equation, and m is an integer. So then m square minus 7m minus 14 times q square plus 1 equal to 0. M satisfies this equation star, which gives m square equal to 7 times. We took these two terms to the right hand side and took 7 common out of these two terms. So 7 divides m square, and 7 is prime, and we read that if a prime number divides the product of two numbers, it must divide either of the two numbers. So if a prime number divides a square, it must divide the number itself. So 7 is prime and 7 divides m square, which means 7 divides m or 7 divides m, which basically implies that 7 divides m. So 7 divides m means m equal to 7n, where n is an integer. So we substitute the value of m in star. We basically put m equal to 7n in star, and we get this. So star gives 49n square plus 49n minus 14q square equal to plus 1 equal to 0, which is basically 7. We take 7 common out of all these. So 7n square plus 7n minus 2q square plus 1 equal to 0. Now taking 7n square and 7n on the right hand side, we get twice of q square plus 1 equal to 7 times n square plus 1, which means 7 divides 2 times q square plus 1. But 7, the GCD of 7 and 2 is 1, which means 7 divides q square plus 1. This is another property that we read. If if A divides B, C, and GCD of A and B is 1, then A divides C. So this is the property that we used here, and which gives 7 divides q square plus 1. But 7 cannot divide a square plus 1, that is q square plus 1, and q was given to be an integer, so let's use that property. So uh, my claim is that any square when divided by 7 leaves remainder either 0, 1, 4 and 2, or 2. And if q square leaves remainder 0, 1, 4 and 2 when divided by 7, then q square plus 1 would leave a remainder 1, 2, 5 or 3. So none of the remainder of q square plus 1 is 0, which means q square plus 1 is never divisible by 7. So how do we arrive at this claim? So basically using division algorithm we can write q equal to 7k plus 0, 7k plus 1, 7k plus 2, so on 7k plus 6. These are the possible remainders when an integer q is divided by 7, and then q square would come out to be 7l plus 1, 7l plus 7l plus 0, 7l plus 1, so on 7l plus 1. And the possible remainders are 0, 1, 4, 2, 2, 4, 1 respectively. So q square plus 7 would always be of the form 7l plus 1 plus 2 plus 5 plus 3. So 7 never divides q square plus 1. 7 does not divide q square plus 1. Earlier we had got that 7 divides q square plus 1 assuming that the root of this equation is an integer. So that gave the contradiction, which means this equation star has no integer roots. So that concludes the problem. The important ideas in this problem was one is proved by contradiction, which should be natural by now. If there's no direct way of proving something, we generally proceed by proof by contradiction. Second is, if there is an equation and we want to prove that it doesn't have an integer solution, we can always go by using the ideas of divisibility. And within divisibility we saw that if a prime divides another square, it must divide the number itself. If a prime divides the square of a number, it must divide the number itself. And second is that the remainder by 7, the remainder of any square by 7 is only 0, 1, 4 and 2. This is a general idea. If we divide the square of a number by any number, the remainder set is generally reduced in almost half. The reason for this is if you observe the remainder from 7k plus 1 is the square of 7k plus 1 is of the form 7l plus 1, and the remainder of 7l plus 6 is also 7l plus 1, and so on 7k plus 2 is of the form 7l plus 4, and 7k plus 5 is of the form 7l plus 4. So this basically says that the remainder of a square by n and n minus a square by n are the same. So both a square and n minus a square give the same remainder. Both a square and n minus a square give the same remainder when divided by n. So that's another idea. This concludes the problem. Let's look at the third problem. This is the second problem that came in RMO 1997. So the problem says, for each positive integer n, define an equal to 20 plus n square and dn equal to the GCD of an and an plus 1. Find the set of all values that are taken by dn and show by examples that each of these values is attained. So this is an interesting problem, and I would also say it's an easy one. So that's why they have tried to use n and dn and so on, these notations to basically discourage the student to not attempt it. But if you attempt this question, this is a fairly easy problem, and only uses one idea, which is that the GCD of a and b is equal to the GCD of a plus a and b plus a times x, where x is any integer. So and this is the property that we saw in the last lecture also. So let's start with the problem. So before proceeding, we can try a few values of of an and try a few values of dn to familiarize ourselves with the problem. So I calculated some of the values of an and dn and saw that 3 is one of the values, 1 is another value possible for d1 for dn. And then let's jump right into the problem. So dn is the GCD of an plus 1, and an is 20 plus n square and an plus 1 is 20 plus n plus 1 whole square. So GCD of a and b is equal to GCD of a times b plus ax, where x belongs to integer. So in this problem I set x equal to -1, so GCD of 20 plus n square equal to GCD of 20 plus n plus 1 whole square minus 20 plus n square. So I subtracted this this a from b. So I got 2n plus 1 here. So GCD of 20 plus n square times n 2n plus 1. So I also want to reduce this further, but for this I would have to multiply this 2n. So I want to remove this n square term from this 20 plus n square, so that I am left with a constant. That's my idea. I want to make this a constant, and if I get a constant here, I can say what the GCD would be. So I want to remove the n square term over here. So for removing n square, I need to multiply this by n by 2. Now n by 2 could be or could not be an integer, so I need to consider two cases, because this GCD formula is applicable only when x is an integer. I cannot multiply a fraction over here. So I consider two cases. One is when n is even, that is when n by 2 is an integer. So if n by 2 is an integer, then dn equal to GCD of 20 plus n square to n plus 1, which is 20 plus n square minus, I can multiply this by n by 2, 2n plus 1 by n by 2, and subtract it from this first part over here, and 2n plus 1. So n by 2, 2n plus 1 is n square, so I can get I got rid of this n square, but I got an extra term which is n by 2. So again this is dependent on n, so I would like I want to remove the dependence of n from this now. So for this I can multiply this by 4 and subtract it from here. Then I'll get 2n terms here, and 2n would cancel out. So but first observe that GCD of 20 minus n by 2 and 2n plus 1 is n by 2 minus 20 and 2n plus 1. So basically GCD of a and b equal to GCD of a and minus b. You can try to prove this property, but I'll just use it here. And so GCD of n by 2 minus 20 and 2n plus 1 minus 4 times n by 2 minus 20. So 2n gets cancelled out and this becomes 81. So now I have got a constant here, n by 2 minus 20 and 81. So GCD of two numbers must divide each of the two numbers. So dn is the GCD of n by 2 minus 20 and 81. So dn divides 81. So dn equal to 1, 3, 9, 27, 81 are the possible values, because these are the possible number. These are the numbers which divide 81. So these are the possible values. Now I also need to conclude that each of these values is attainable. Means dn equal to 1 is actually attained for one of the values of n. So for this, just observe that if I set n by 2 minus 20 equal to 1, then this term is 1 and this term is 81. So the GCD is definitely 1. Similarly, if I set n by 2 minus 20 as 3, then this GCD of 3 and 81 is 3. So I just need to set n by 2 minus 20 equal to dn, and I'll get the GCD equal to dn. So if I do that, setting n by 2 minus 20 equal to 1, 3, 9, 27 and 81, the values of dn, we'll get such values of dn which gives n equal to 42, 46, 58, 94 and 202. So these are 5 values of n which give the possible values of Dn as these. The second case is when n is odd. N is odd, which means n minus 1 by 2 is an integer. So this time I'll subtract n minus 1 by 2 times 2n plus 1 from this term to get rid of n square. So GCD Dn equal to n square plus 20 minus n minus 1 by 2 times 2n plus 1 and 2n plus 1. So this n square gets cancelled out and I'm left with 20 minus n plus 1 by 2 and 2n plus 1. So again I can multiply this by 4 and then subtract from this to get rid of 2n term. So first multiply this by minus 1. So I get GCD of n plus 1 by 2 minus 20 and 2n plus 1. And if I subtract 4 times this from this equation, I am left with 79 here, and 79 is the constant term. So and 79 is prime also. So Dn divides 79 and the two factors are 1 and 79. And again if we set n plus 1 by 2 minus 20 equal to 1 and equal to 79, I'll get the GCD exactly equal to 1 and 79. So the values of n is 41 and 197 give the values, corresponding values. So this concludes the problem. This had only one important idea in this problem. There was only one important idea, which is the GCD of a and b equal to a and b plus ax, where x is an integer. And another minor idea is that because we wanted to remove the dependency of n squared and get a constant so that the GCD, we could get the exact values of GCD, we had to consider some cases and do some arrangement on what we want our x to be in the formula. Let's look at fourth problem now. This is the problem of RMO 2002, problem number 3. So this is a fairly easy problem. If a, b, c are positive integers such that a divides b square, b divides c square and c divides a square, then a, b, c divides a plus b plus c whole to the power 7. So one thing to note here is that a plus b plus c to the power 7 would have terms like a to the power x, b to the power y, c to the power z, where x plus y plus z equal to 7. Because if you write this in expanded form, a plus b 7 times, and you start multiplying, then you can either pick a from here, the first term, or b or c from the first term, and so on. You would pick 7 terms, and that will constitute one term of the product. So you can write this out also as well, or use something called multinomial formula. But basically this is the idea that this would have terms of the form a to the power x, b to the power y and c to the power z, where x plus y plus z equal to 7, and there would be some constants multiplied as well, because these terms could occur again. Now if a to the power x, b to the power y and c to the power z, if all of x, y and z are greater than equal to 1, then ABC definitely divides this term. So I only need to check if one of these term is less than 1, which is 0. So if one of these term is missing from this equation, then also I need to show that ABC divides this term. So yeah, one thing to consider, one thing to note is that if m divides x and n divides y, then mn divides xy. So using this, we will use this property quite often in this problem. So we are given b divides c square, which means b square divides c to the power 4, using the same property, and m and n are both b, and x and y are c square. So b square divides c to the power 4, and a divides b square, so a divides c to the power 4. So a divides c to the power 4, b divides c square, and c divides c, which gives, again we use the same property and we multiply all of these. So ABC divides c to the power 4 plus c square plus c, which is c to the power 7. So ABC divides c to the power 7. Similarly, there was nothing unique about c, we just chose it, but these conditions are symmetric. A divides b square, b divides c square, c divides a square. This is in a cycle a, b and c. So by symmetry we can say that ABC divides a to the power 7 and ABC divides b to the power 7. If you are not convinced, you can definitely try this out on your own, proving these two parts. And the second step is, so if a number is only if a term is has only one of these three ABC, then it's divisible by ABC. Second possibility is when there are two different terms, A and B. So the three possibilities in this case is a to the power 6, a b to the power 6, a square b to the power 5, a cube b to the power 4, and these are the three possibilities. Other terms would again be a to the power 4 b cube. This is similar to this, only the role of a and b are interchanged, but there was nothing unique about a and this. By symmetry we can say that this term is already covered. And similarly, a square b to the power 5 b square and a to the power 6 b. So this term is covered by this. So because ABC are all symmetrical, so note that C divides A square and A divides B square, which gives A square divides B to the power 4 using this equation, and C divides A square gives C divides B to the power 4. So ABC divides ABC to the power 6, because A divides A, B divides B, and C divides B to the power 4. This implies that ABC divides AB to the power 5 actually, and so it divides AB to the power 6 as well. And when writing down this proof, I forgot to prove these other two cases, but this is proved because I just proved that ABC divides AB to the power 5, so it divides A square B to the power 5, and since ABC divides AB to the power 5, ABC divides AB to the power 6. The only case remaining is when we have a term like A cube B to the power 4, then with A cube B to the power 4, A divides, so B is obviously okay. So for term like A cube B to the power 4, A divides A divides C divides A square and B divides B. So ABC divides A cube B. So this shows that ABC divides A cube B to the power 4, term like this. So finally we have proved that all of the terms which even if they don't contain all the three terms ABC, still they are divisible by ABC. So in the expansion of A to the power A plus B plus C to the power 7, we get terms like A to the power 7, B to the power 6, and so on, which do not have at least one of ABC, and there are terms like ABC to the power 5, A square B square C to the power 3, and so on, which have all three of ABC. So all the terms in L are divisible by ABC, and all the terms in R contain ABC, so they are divisible by ABC. Therefore, ABC divides each term in the expansion of a plus b plus c to the power 7, and therefore ABC divides this whole term a plus b plus c to the power 7. So this concludes the problem. The ideas in this problem was understanding the multinomial expansion, which is what happens if you multiply if we raise up sum of three terms to a power, how do the terms in the expansion look like? And the second idea was to use the properties of divisibility, the very basic properties of divisibility. Now, as promised in the last lecture, let's look at the final problem in this video lecture, which is a problem of INMO 2014. This is problem number 2. So, let n be a natural number, then prove that n by 1, the greatest integer of n by 1 and greatest integer of n by 2, so on greatest integer of n by n plus greatest integer of root n is even. So greatest integer of x is basically the highest integer which is less than equal to x. So is k such that k is less than equal to x and k plus 1 is greater than x. So the greatest integer of 5.3 is 5. The greatest integer of 5 is 5 itself. The greatest integer of 4.9 is 4. Greatest integer of minus 4.9 is minus 5, and so on. So this is the greatest integer function, and I need to prove that the greatest integer, this sum of greatest integers are even. So I will also prove, I'll also use induction in this problem. So why are we using induction? So first observe that n plus 1 by k, greatest integer of n plus 1 by k minus n by k, greatest integer is 1 if k divides n plus 1 and is 0 otherwise. You can observe this by an example. So if we have 5 by 3 minus 4 by 3, then both are 1, because or to understand this, let's consider this. So move to this part. So I have n plus 1 by k. The greatest integer of n plus 1 by k is basically, if I have n plus 1 equal to b times k plus r, where 0 is less than equal to r less than k, then the greatest integer of n plus 1 by k is b. So b is basically the quotient that we get such that the remainder is between 0 and k. So n plus 1 by k minus n by k is either 1 or 0. It would be 1 if n plus 1 divides k, then this term would become 1 more than n by k. For example, 7 divides 14, so 14 by 7 greatest integer is 2, and 13 by 7 the greatest integer is 1. 13 by 7, greatest integer of 13 by 7 is 1, and greatest integer of 14 by 7 is 2. So their difference is 1. Otherwise, because 7 does not divide 13, the quotient would remain the same, minus 12 by 2 equal to 0. Both are giving, by 7. Both are giving the same quotient, which is 1. Only the remainder would differ. So this is an interesting observation and a very useful one. So we have established a link between n plus 1 and the greatest integer of n plus 1 by k and greatest integer of n by k. And how did we come to this observation? This could only be observed if you have a very sharp mind, or by trial and error. So in generally in number theory problems, we could observe a few things by trial and error. If you substitute some values of n, and you observe what is happening to each of the values, you can observe few trends, etc. So that's why we use induction. So pk is this function f of k. I named this function f of k, which is k by 1 greatest integer plus so on k by k greatest integer plus greatest integer of root k, and pk says that this f of k is even. So let's observe the base case. Base case is k equal to 1, which gives 1 by 1 plus root 1, which is 2, is even. And suppose as a basic theory of induction gives, suppose p of k is true, then the induction step, we want to prove pk plus 1, which is basically fk plus 1 is even. So we consider fk plus 1 minus f of k, so which is all these terms, k plus 1 by 1 minus k by 1, k plus 1 by 2 minus k by 2, greatest integer of these, plus k plus 1 by k minus k by k, plus there would be a last term which comes in f of k plus 1 and not in k, which is k plus 1 by k, greatest integer of k plus 1 by k, plus root k plus 1 minus root k. So this is the value of fk plus 1 minus fk. So observe that this would be 1 if k if 1 divides k plus 1 and 0 otherwise. This would be 1 if 2 divides k plus 1 and 0 otherwise, and so on. So the number of ones in this whole series is equal to the number of divisors of k plus 1. So I also write this term k plus 1 by k plus 1 in the form k plus 1 by k plus 1 minus k by k plus 1, because this term is 0, because k is less than k plus 1, so the greatest integer of k by k plus 1 is 0. So writing this like this, so now I have a symmetrical expression where each of these there are k plus 1 total terms, and each of these terms is 1 if and only if k plus 1 if and only if the denominator d divides k plus 1, and the number of divisors of we know the number of divisors of a non-square number is even, and the number of divisors of a square number is odd. So we will use that property as well. So each of these term is 1 if t divides k plus 1 and 0 otherwise, and the number of divisors of k plus 1 is even if k plus 1 is not a square. So if k plus 1 is not a square, the number of ones in that whole expression is even, and if k plus 1 is not a square, root of k plus 1, greatest integer of this minus greatest integer of root k is 0, because root k plus 1 would be, let's say I have k plus 1 equal to 35, which is not a perfect square, then root of k plus 1 would be equal to 5, which is basically, and root of k would also be equal to 5, because this is root 35 and this is root 34. So since none of these is a perfect square, the greatest integer of all these would be 5 point something and 5 point something. So the greatest integer would be the same, which is 5. So fk plus 1 minus fk is even, because the number of ones are even and this term is 0. And if k plus 1 is a square, then number of ones are odd, because the number of divisors of a square number is odd. So the number of ones are odd. But then if k plus 1 is a perfect square, then k plus 1 root GIF of greatest integer of root of k plus 1 minus greatest integer of root of k is equal to 1, because this is a perfect square. So this is, let's say, 36. So root of 36 is 6, but 35 is not a perfect square, and root 35 would be 5 point something. So 6 minus 5, greatest integer of this is 6, and 5, greatest integer of this is 5. 6 minus 5 is 1. So f of k plus 1 minus f of k is even. Therefore again pk plus 1 is so in both cases we showed that fk plus 1 minus fk is even, and in the first step we showed fk is even, f of 1 is even, therefore pk plus 1 is true, which means all of those the series is even for all natural numbers. So this concludes the final the final problem and also the video lecture. Thank you for watching.